When this museum was first started, it was known as the Bellingham Radio Museum, but since they've added a great deal of electrical stuff, plus the highlight of the museum today is the Tesla coil. This is in the old part of Bellingham. And the back side of that beautiful old radio. That single radio was to whet your appetite. This is just a very small portion of the Radio Electrical Museum. Speakers from the teens, 20s, 30s.
This is a disc music box like the kind that was popular in the late 19th century. They were popular, so roughly from the 1870s to the 1890s, but then when the phonograph came around as an affordable commercial device in the 1890s and early 20th century, the market for these disappeared and they were basically gone overnight. This is a disc music box. It's a similar principle to the earlier cylinder music boxes. You have a disc which is punched out, and on the underside of the punches you have little metal tongues, and those pluck what are called star wheels, which actually pluck the metal comb to make the music as the disc spins around. And this one is the Bluebells of Scotland. We'll give this a spin here.
Beautiful sound.
It is. It's very sonorous. The whole case is just hollow, solid mahogany. The whole thing acts as a sounding board and a resonator. You really feel it.
It's strictly a wind-up.
Yeah, it's clockwork.
How long does that disc play?
I haven't timed it, but it's about a minute.
About a minute?
There were smaller ones that played shorter selections and larger ones that played discs this big around 2 minutes or a little over 2 minutes.
Now, how many of those do you have in the museum?
I actually don't know.
Got some in storage, I bet.
We probably do. There's a lot in storage I haven't actually personally seen yet.
That's it.
Yeah. This is a disc music box. Disc music boxes were also popular in the 19th century before the advent of recorded music. And it uses similar technology to the disc music box, though it predates it by some decades. And similar to music boxes you find today, you have a barrel or cylinder with pins on it that engage steel combs, or reeds, or tongues, or whatever you want to call them.
Reeds, I suppose.
To make the music. This is a Swiss-made mechanism, though I believe the cabinetry might have been made in this country. It was, since these are clockwork, it's very typical for the mechanisms that have been made in Central Europe, such as Switzerland and Germany.
It's beautiful woodwork.
It is. It's gorgeous oak. And I will play this one. It doesn't sound quite as good as the disc music box, but it does work. Open this up a little bit louder, a little easier to photograph. The spring is slipping, unfortunately. We'll have to take that apart at some point. This is an Edison standard from the first decade of the 20th century. I'd say roughly around 1906 or 1907 would be a good ballpark figure for its age. This is a popular home cylinder player. It played the earlier 2-minute cylinders. The conversion kits were available to convert to play the later 4-minute cylinders. And like the music boxes, it's powered by a clockwork motor. There's a spring here, a gear train, and a governor to regulate the speed. It's entirely mechanical, no electricity involved whatsoever. And the records work, also completely mechanical, is that you have the sound wave recorded on the record surface in a groove. In this case, on cylinders, instead of the groove walls moving side to side, as we're probably more familiar with, the groove bottom moves up and down.
Yes.
And when the record spins, it vibrates a ball or doorknob shaped stylus at the very end of this lever, and this lever then vibrates and pulls against the diaphragm inside the housing of this device, which is called the reproducer, and that goes out through the horn and recreates the original sound wave. This is I'll get the name of this here. This is called Indian Summer. It is a band selection on an indestructible celluloid record.
And what year was that recorded about?
I couldn't actually tell you. I need to look up the catalog number. However,
Okay.
it's sometime between about 1909 and 1912 would be my guess.
Excuse me, where's the restroom? Oh, Wellington.
Amazing for 1909 or 1912.
It is. It really never ceases to amaze me how well this works, as simple as it is. This is a later Edison cylinder phonograph. In about 1906, Victor came out with a machine, the Victrola, which put the horn on the inside, which people liked. Because with an inside horn, you can close it up, have a nice piece of furniture sitting in
Sure.
your living room.
Looks like a sewing machine.
Yeah, it kind of does. So the same principle as that. The sound comes from the reproducer here, goes through this tubing and down out to the horn opening, which is underneath and here. And this one I actually just fixed up yesterday and got it running. Let's see if it
Wonderful.
plays well.
You're a jack of all trades. You enjoy this, don't you?
I do. Bit of noise there. This is a later 4-minute cylinder, which is the same as a 2-minute cylinder, just twice as many grooves on it.
Okay.
So it plays longer. You can also close the lid and cut down the surface noise a little bit.
A magic box.
Yeah.
What year?
Oh, these would have been made between about, I'm trying to remember here, roughly 1910, 1911, and 1914, this particular model. I may be off by a year or two on either side, but it's a good ballpark. I'll have to look up all these figures again. I knew them at one point.
Now, is that fairly common today?
This particular sheet is not very common. These smaller, these are both Ambrola 30s. Those are very common machines. Those were manufactured from 1914 to 1929. This is an earlier one. I don't know exactly the date. This is a later one. I don't know the date of this too, but they're basically the same. I'll play this one. It's a little nicer. And they still need some work, but they are running and they do play.
And the brand is what?
Oh, this is a Edison Ambrola 30.
Okay. And that's one of the more common ones.
Yeah, this is probably the most common cylinder player out there. This is Dixie Medley, banjo by Fred Van Epps. He was a
Banjo.
popular banjo player and recorder in the early 20th century, prolific recorder. All right, there we go.
Dixie.
Tell Mother I'll Be There, a mixed quartet. It's a dreadfully sentimental song from the 19th century. Motor up. Problem with these short horns that the Ambrolas 30s have is they tend to be kind of tinny sounding, and this record is not in the best of shape either.
If a person were to find one of those in an antique store, what's it worth about? Gut feel.
Oh, one in really good shape, maybe about 250 to 300 at most, I would think.
Yeah, he's a little wavy, come over on the ocean waves.
Yeah, the cylinder's out of round. It's a problem with these later cylinders. They're made of celluloid
Oh,
on a
okay.
plaster of Paris core, and plaster of Paris, you can kind of see it in there, absorbs
Yeah.
moisture. So over the
it'll
decades, it'll
warp it.
swell and warp.
Not too bad.
And if you're adventurous, you can get a specially shaped tool to sand them out on the inside and get them all trued up again, though it's not always worth the effort. I don't know the history of these very well. These are commonly called roller organs. They were very popular in the late 19th century. And they used the principle of a music box. You had a wooden barrel or cob with little nails or pins driven into it that open these valves. And underneath these valves are free reeds, like in an accordion or harmonica or reed organ. So turning this crank turns the barrel. It also pumps bellows. And let's see if we get this thing to work here. It's a very slow and clumsily arranged version of Dixie.
Kind of like the organ grinder.
Yes, very much same thing.
Very much the same thing as the organ grinder on the streets of New York.
Except, thankfully, this thing's in tune.
Yeah.
Those things never are. They drive me crazy. You can do it really slowly and play as a dirge if you want to.
Yeah. Wonderful. I've never seen one of those. I've seen organ grinder, you know, the organ with the monkey. But, interesting.
These don't show up very often. I don't know if they just weren't very popular or they just didn't survive.
Well,
because
people didn't want to crank it.
Yeah, it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And again, these are the kinds of things that people would probably throw away after they got a nice player piano and a phonograph after a few years.
Yeah, went to the dump.
Yeah. This is a Columbia Imperial, which was, and I looked it up last night actually, and if memory serves, it was made around 1911. This is a top-of-the-line external horn. This phonograph has got this really nice mahogany horn here. And this was manufactured by Columbia from the beginning of the disc era, the first decade of the 20th century, into the second decade, really ending around 1919, 1920, when it came to disc records like these. There's really only
That's
just
a 78, right?
Yeah, 78 RPM. Actually, in the case of Columbia, they recorded 80. But
Oh, is that right?
yeah, there really was no speed standard. Victor sort of arbitrarily chose 78, but even then they didn't always record at 78. Sometimes they recorded at 76 or even slower. The speed was only standardized in about 1926 to 78 RPM. But Victor and Columbia were the two major disc manufacturers. And I will crank this up. This is actually a record from my own collection. This is, I can read it here. Tram d'Amore is a waltz played by Prince's Orchestra, which was the house orchestra and band for Columbia for many years. The right speed here.
Sound like you're a little tired.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that's the record or the machine or both. This is a slow waltz.
That's my kind. Keep from stepping on the girl's foot.
That's a mistake I've made.
Ha ha!
This is a Victrola model the 11th. The nameplate says XI, but Victor wanted to sound fancy, call it the 11th in their the Roman numeral for 11, which XI is. The trade publications. This machine in particular was, let's see, we've got, yes, it's A stamped, so this is made about 19, oh dear, I'm going to get the exact date again, but the ballpark figure would be about 1919, 1920. It has what collectors call the fat tone arm, and it has a number 2 reproducer. This is probably the most popular model of Victrola from this era. They're very common, and a lot of people consider it to be the best bang for your buck. You get a nice big storage cabinet for your records down here. You have a good sized horn, you have a good sized 2-spring motor, and a nice cabinet. And when you close it all up,
Piece of furniture,
and you can lock it, which is nice. You can keep your children or your servants from playing records when you don't want them to. So, this is a dance tune from the 20s, On My Way to Monterey, Foxtrot by Henry Halstead and his orchestra. It's wound up here. That was a mainspring jumping. I need to work on that too. It needs grease. You can close up the lid, and you use these doors as volume control.
Yep.
And these things, because they're so hard to play, they didn't really find a niche in serious music. They ended up being used as novelties and, as you mentioned, for soundtracks of science fiction films and later TV shows. And anytime someone needed a spooky kind of effect that sounded not quite like singing, something kind of weird and unearthly sounding. There was that I know of only one really truly serious thereminist, that was Clara Rockmore. She started out as a violinist, and she had perfect pitch, so she could master the theremin.
Didn't you have a recording of her?
We do have a recording of her playing. I'm pretty sure recordings of hers are still in print. You can find them one place or another if you really want to. It's really gorgeous the way she interprets a lot of this stuff.
He wanted to grind grain with this machine. He wanted to drive farm equipment with this machine.
That seems really unlikely.
Ping pong balls.
Couldn't find enough ping pong balls in the 18th century to make a big enough one.
There we go.
Hey, you did it. You must have been holding your mouth right. That's all I can say. Look
So
at that.
now what's happening? He's generating the power and...
Mechanical energy is creating electrical energy, electrostatic energy, and that's being shipped over by wires. That electrical energy is being translated back into mechanical energy through induction. So
Okay.
the charges are influencing each other and causing some repulsion and attraction. That's called induction.
And a
It's not-
total overall efficiency of about 3%.
Okay, and it's not magnetism, but it's analogous to magnetism.
3/10 of 3/100ths of one.
Really?
So you've just hit at the intrinsic shortcoming of an electrostatic motor. It's not powerful enough to create enough torque or horsepower to actually do any work. But look at this, it's spinning. And this happened 150 years before a real motor was invented.
That's Benjamin
That's
Franklin.
Benjamin Franklin. Yeah, he was a genius, obviously, and this was his hobby. This little invention saved thousands of lives. And I'll explain why if you haven't guessed already. So he did not power his bells with a generator. He used a lightning rod attached to his roof, attached to a wire, attached to these bells. And under a particular condition, his bells would start to ring inside of his house. So I always ask, what condition was present when his bells would start to ring inside of his house? And people guess, oh, lightning strike. Yes, no. Thunderstorm. Yes, no. Guess what? These bells would start to ring when it was still sunny at his farm. His bells would start to ring when there was a thunderstorm on the horizon, 40 or 50 miles away. The electrostatic energy in the atmosphere would be drained into his lightning rod, which he invented, go down the wire and start attraction and repulsion, and there's a third force at work here as well, which you can probably guess what it is. What is it?
Induction.
It's induction that drives this machine right here, but it's actually gravity. So as the pendulum goes up, it has to come down again. So there's three forces, attraction, repulsion, and gravity, that are causing these bells to ring. So he had hours of advance warning of an oncoming lightning storm, which he used wisely. He was a very wise man. He warned his neighbors, who were ranchers and farmers, get your livestock in the barn, fellas, there's a lightning storm coming. And so, you know, human nature being what it is, they probably ignored him the first couple times, until a couple more show horses lost their life through electrocution by lightning strike. Then they took him seriously, and I'm guessing that he built these little machines for his friends and neighbors because he was that kind of a guy. And these are the thousands of lives that he saved, the heads of livestock that were herded into the barn when his friends and neighbors heard their bells ringing, anticipating a lightning storm. So what does that make Franklin the very first one of? The first weatherman, the first weather person. And in modern terms, he was the very first meteorologist. If we had never invented Doppler radar, which we use today to forecast lightning storms, we could still use Franklin's bells. They were accurate, they gave plenty of advance warning in time, and we could still seek shelter if we needed to and put our animals in the barn when we heard these bells ringing inside of our house. This is a Van de Graaff generator, invented in 1929, and today it's a toy, but back then they wanted to split the atom with it. They did particle physics with the Van de Graaff generator in the late 20s and 30s. And it generates static electricity. It's friction machine technology. In other words, there's two materials in there. One of them gives up electrons, the other one gains electrons. And those two materials are incorporated into the pulleys that are traveling, or that are allowing this belt to travel up and down.
Oh, I see. Okay.
One of the pulleys is Teflon, the other pulley is another material. And by their nature, one material gives up electrons, the other gains electrons. All the negative charges go down into the ground through that alligator clip down there, which leaves all the positive charges on this globe here.
Now that's the one that if you touch, your hair stands on end, right?
If you put your hands on it, yeah, we'll demonstrate that. You take a bullet here, there we go. Shaking the head loosens the hair and it helps them stand up better. All my hairs are becoming positively charged, and like charges repel, whether it's two negatives or two positives. So all my positively charged hairs are trying to run away from each other.
Too much gel this morning.
Anytime. Not off the floor, not off the ground. So let's get off the ground and see what happens. I'm going up.
Yeah.
That help?
Yeah, it's starting to raise. It's starting to get hair raising there.
Getting hair raising.
Wolfman's coming around the corner.
A serious case of bedhead here.
Yeah.
So we can calculate how powerful this machine is. I can also show you a laboratory experiment that Benjamin Franklin did that convinced him that he had invented something to prevent lightning. Oh, I just grounded my hair so it just fell down.
Yeah, it did.
So here's the rule of thumb about electricity. For every inch you see an electric arc, that represents 20,000 volts. This is what I call our kid magnet. Whenever children come into the static lab, they are instantly attracted to the plasma ball, like iron filings to a magnet, and you can see why. It's very impressive. This is a plasma ball. It has other names, a nebula ball. This was actually an invention of Nikola Tesla 120 years ago in his attempt to create a new kind of lighting. And so he invented this, put it on the shelf, and then in the 1980s, a fellow found this technology and says, well, that looks like a cool toy. I can make some money off of that, and created the plasma ball, which are so popular today. This is a very large, expensive plasma ball. It is powered by the same technology that Nikola Tesla powered his by. There is a Tesla coil in the base that's sending high voltage, high frequency electricity up into this ball. Now let me explain what I'm talking about. This ball is evacuated of air and backfilled with inert gases called argon and neon. So when that Tesla coil energizes, it creates a different kind of electricity that comes out of the wall. That stuff that comes out of the wall is about 120 volts, about 35 or 30 or 15 amps, depending on what the circuit it's hooked up to. But most importantly, it's 60 cycles, which means 60 times a second the electrons go back and forth in the wire, vibrating, alternating back and forth 60 times a second, and that is characteristic of alternating current. 60 times a second, 60 hertz it's called. This device, the Tesla coil, creates high voltage, maybe 20,000 volts at high frequency. How high? Well, it's not 60 times a second. It's over 200,000 times per second. Those electrons go back and forth in the energy stream. And when you have high voltage, high frequency electricity, it doesn't need wires. It goes right through the atmosphere. It goes through anything. It goes through vacuum in space and goes on to infinity. In fact, it goes through glass, which normally glass stops an electron stream, a current, which is typical wired electricity. This is wireless broadcast energy. Goes right through that little glass ball in the middle, that glass right there, this plexiglass. This is a neon bulb that's encased in plastic and glass, and it lights up very neatly. When I put it in the power stream, the energy stream, here's a red one. Does the same thing. Now here's a neon bulb on top. And I can just, all I do is touch it, and I'm making a path to ground because I'm the lowest potential. And that's why those lightning bolts, you might call them, come from the inside to the outside of the large sphere, or to the inside of the large sphere. They're seeking lower potential. That's what electricity does. So it's coming through the glass, through the plexiglass, through that glass, across my body and down into ground, and that's what lights up this neon light bulb. I have a fluorescent light bulb right here that does the same thing a little bit differently. This is coated with phosphors, and it also lights up in this energy stream, in this broadcast energy. So it's going through that glass, this plexiglass, and that glass. Normally this phosphorescent or fluorescent light lights up when you put electricity in the base. That actually vaporizes a little bead of mercury. That mercury vapor strikes the phosphors lining the inside of the glass, excites them and causes them to emit light. We don't even need that little bead of mercury in this case. We just need this broadcast energy, high voltage, high frequency energy. Now what's creating the effect in the plasma ball is kind of interesting. The argon and neon, when the high voltage, high frequency electricity travels through, that energy travels through the argon and neon, it ionizes those gases, creates a path of energy, blows the electrons off the atoms of the argon and neon, and creates what's called plasma, which is really a particle soup. It's nuclei and electrons flying around independent of each other. That's called plasma. And believe it or not, I've read that 99% of space is plasma. So this is a plasma ball. That's plasma you're looking at right there. And when I turn off the power to the plasma ball, those argon and neon atoms go back into their regular orientation of electrons traveling around the nucleus. Very stable atom. They're inert and they don't react, but high voltage, high frequency electricity causes them to basically blow apart again and create what's called plasma, which is the fourth state of matter: solid, liquid, gas, plasma.
What happens if you rub that?
It tries to go to ground again. I'm the lower potential, so you can see it's turning pink here, the closest part where I'm touching it, or touching the plexiglass, because it's coming through all those materials again.
Yes.
It's seeking me as the lowest potential because I'm the ground. These laser machines made so much of this mysterious substance that now you could hear crackling sound. Now you can see light, burst of light, the spark. I'm going to turn on the machine, please. Shake your hair a little bit. That should be building up unless you go right to Now, she's touching 250,000 volts. What if she touches it with her other hand?
I get shocked.
No.
I don't know.
Go ahead.
No.
Both hands. Both hands. Yeah, touch it. See, it's zero. You know, it's 250,000, 250,000. It's like water in a tub, just level. Now, what if she was, she could give those electrons a fighting chance. She's got long, thick hair. I don't hear anything else except I can see the little fringe on your slippers there floating up.
What?
You feel anything? You should. Now, what if she was to touch me?
No.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Because I'm zero. She's 250,000. That's not bad. That's not bad. Also, it's a little bit damp today. Static electricity doesn't work as well in damp weather. Look at everybody. Give them a good look there. Okay, all right. Now, I'm going to do what Bill talked about with the lightning rod. Points again, you know. Points, 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 points. Points.
I feel like that's a shock.
I know you feel like it, or you might, I can tell you that it's not. Here's what's going to happen.
I'm going to gently drain the charge off. Right. And I'm doing a little bit of, it's going to ground through me, but it's going a little bit at a time so I don't get shocked. If I was to reach over and touch her, that's now, you know, we're going to put you through enough. So here's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to have Tarek, please turn off the machine. Now, step down. Yeah. Now, stand here and say one thing. So just like any, you know, again, you can't be a human being and not make static electricity. Every time you touch your cat, you touch your doorknob. Every time you go down a slide, you go down a slide and touch your friend, you'll shock. And you just went down a slide. And you've got some electrons on you still. And so you might get a little, you know, but what you can do is, if you walked over and touched a tree or a piece of dry wood, touch a piece of dry wood. It's all gone. Charge is gone.
All of it?
All of it. Shake my hand, nothing, and now listen.
Give it to you.
You gave it to me. I took that little spot. How's that, huh? Yay!
Ready? Go! On three. 1, 2, 3.
Oh yeah!
Hey!
Oh yeah, that's it. All right, get kind of hot. Take it over here. It's down. 100, 150. Steven up. That kind of electricity is not what we use today to power the world. And you're all familiar with what we do use today. One of them is called DC power, the other is called AC power. DC power is a battery. You're familiar with that. I'm going to show you a couple of these. 9-volt battery, 6-volt battery, 1.5-volt battery. That's chemical energy, creating electricity. That's what powered my microphone, which I turned off and found wasn't the guilty party. We're going to have to get to the bottom of that. That was really annoying. Powers toys, your telephones. That's one of the two types of electricity that powers the world today. The other type is typified by this right here. You're all familiar with the wall plug and the 3-prong plug that inserts into it. That's called alternating current, or AC electricity. This was not invented by Nikola Tesla, but this was perfected by Nikola Tesla. Both the generation and the transmission of alternating current was perfected by that gentleman who came to the United States to work for Edison, eventually set out on his own and made great strides in the world. He is responsible for not only perfecting alternating current generation and transmission, but also remote control. He invented that. Demonstrated a remote controlled model boat for the U.S. Navy. At the turn of the 20th century, they said, we don't want anything to do with that. That looks like black magic. He was controlling it from the shore with a black box. They literally didn't want to have anything to do with it. They were too suspicious of it. He also invented what's called the AC induction motor, which you all have in your homes, throughout industry. It's the motor that powers the world, powers your hairdryer, your washing machine, your refrigerator. And Nikola Tesla invented that, perfected it in his mind. He never, supposedly, made a drawing. He rarely made drawings. He never built a prototype until he was ready, 3 years after he conceived the idea. And he built one, turned it on, and it worked the first time. That's the motor that powers the world, the AC induction motor. This kind of electricity is predominant in the world today, AC current. And it has some characteristics. You know, typically it's about 120 volts in the US, maybe 15, 30, 60 amps, depending on what circuit it's plugged into, it's hooked up to. And it has a particular characteristic called frequency. The frequency of the typical house current or house voltage, house power, is 60 cycles per second, 60 hertz. And that simply means that this is alternating current, and those electrons go back and forth in the wire, alternating 60 times in 1 second. What we have in this amazing device over here called a Tesla coil that I just demonstrated for you is a different kind of electricity. This is high voltage. This may be up to 20,000 volts or more in this device right here. The frequency of this device is not 60 times a second, 60 hertz. The frequency of this electricity is over 200,000 times per second. The electrons are vibrating back and forth in the electrical stream. So when we have this kind of electricity, this is called broadcast energy. This kind of electricity doesn't need wires. It goes through the air. And that was Nikola Tesla's genius. He wanted to power the world with this kind of electricity. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. But let me demonstrate for you right now what its most practical application is and what Nikola Tesla's genius is. What I have here is a bank of regular old fluorescent light bulbs, not connected to anything except the air, and wirelessly to the electricity emanating from this Tesla coil. So this is a small Tesla coil, and so I can move this out of range. So far, the energy is weak. It doesn't light up the software anymore. But even that's not going to stop me and Mr. Tesla. So the energy is still moving an even greater distance because it's moving over my body, using my body as a circuit, as a conductor. I hear lightsaber? Yeah. The 9-foot, 4.5 million volt Tesla coil, the largest Tesla coil we're told, west of the Mississippi.
The Megazap.
The Megazap, we love it. It loves
It starts out at 220, like what you got with your washer and dryer, right? Chops it up. By the time it gets 15,000, primary, secondary, 4.5 million volts. Loose electricity in this room. It's time for the second part of our show.
Well, we are going to fire it?
Of course we're going to fire. You didn't come here to hear us talk. It's going to make little sparks.
Okay, I got to figure out which switch it is.
Oh, okay, it's fine, I'm trained, okay? All right, so me and Terry, get our positions. Everybody's good? Doing good?
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Team? Good. That should be the safest place in the room.
A little sensation.
You know, like sensation? Feel some tingling? You might feel a little tingling. There's your eyes dilate. Your eyes dilate a little bit. It's a new lights, Bill. It's not you. Don't worry.
That's bright.
Yay! Thank you. Enjoy the galleries, and that's it. Thank you very much.